Since independence, there have been growing calls for African unity, a call for all African countries to come together to achieve the development and progress of the region. This was the reason why the African Union was created in July 2022. This was also the reason why regional blocs like the West African Bloc, ECOWAS, were created. However, it is safe to say that these institutions have failed to deliver African unity. The continent is nowhere close to being united. Perhaps this is why President Traore, a member of the newly formed Sahel bloc, AES, extended an invitation to all African leaders to join the bloc. Traore made this known in his New Year message. But what makes the AES different from other blocs? Can the AES achieve African unity? Let's find out. On December 31st, 2024, President Traore in his New Year's speech declared that the AES belongs to all Africans who desire sovereignty, independence, and total freedom. He said that the alliance was not created for only Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, but for all African countries that desire freedom and independence from the West. According to Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the AES is called upon to become a strong union in all areas, and particularly with regard to diplomacy, defense, security, and above all, development. President Traore further added, several actions are currently underway to be able to structure this alliance and establish it because it is the beginning of a union in sovereignty, in total freedom, so that Africa can take an example from this alliance and be able to shine. Now, one such structure was the formation of the Alliance of New Logos. The logo was unveiled together with the new AES Web TV by the three ministers in charge of communications in the Confederation of Sahel states. During the event, which began on December 27, 2024, in Bamako, Mali, the ministers in charge concluded a process to create a visual identity for the AES Confederation. Over the course of 3 days, experts from the region's member countries developed documents for effective communication that should increase the visibility of AES actions. Several logo options were proposed at the national level as part of the meeting's recommendations. However, the final version eventually approved by the heads of state is a circle with the words Confederation of Sahel States on a red background. The new logo included an emblem with the slogan, "One space, one people, one destiny." 3 stars were chosen to symbolize the 3 countries, Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. The sun and baobab symbolize life and diversity, while the silhouettes of people symbolize the diversity and interdependence of the peoples of the Sahel. At the end of the event, the ministers expressed their satisfaction with the rapid results of the experts' work and promised to implement new tools for the benefit of the citizens of the Confederation. The ceremony ended with applause, emphasizing the hope that the AES space is now equipped with tools to disseminate reliable information and raise awareness. Before we proceed, we want to thank you for supporting our channel in 2024, and we hope that you will continue to support this channel this year. If you like this video, hit the like button, drop a comment, and subscribe to our channel so that you can get more videos like this. Now, with this, it is clear that the Alliance of the Sahel State is truly committed to its independence and freedom, and this is something that is important for African unity. President Traore has extended an invitation to all African presidents to join the AES, but this is not the first time such an invitation has been extended by the AES. In June 2024, during the annual meeting of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank, the Prime Minister of Niger, Ali Mohamed Lamine Zine, extended an invitation to all ECOWAS member countries to join the AES. He said, "I can't be too provocative, but I want to ask ECOWAS to join the AES. There are ECOWAS countries that would probably want to join the AES because the culture of sovereignty and dignity of the continent exists within the AES. Now here is the big question. What makes the AES different from other African blocs like the African Union and the West African Regional Bloc, ECOWAS? To answer this, we have to look at the evolution of each of these blocs. Let's start with the African Union. The African Union, formerly called the Organization of African Unity, was founded in May 1963. It wasn't until 2002 that the name changed to the African Union under the leadership of Muammar Gaddafi. The OAU, as it was called at the time, was a symbol of the liberation of African peoples and their hope for a happy future. The main message was putting an end to foreign interference, and the only way to make that happen was a unified Africa, with a strong voice on the international stage. So the African Union was designed to help safeguard peace and stability on the continent. However, it's been more than 60 years, and almost everyone can agree that the AU has failed in its objective. There is no peace, and neither is there stability in the continent. Several African countries such as Mali, Niger, Burkina Faso, Sudan, the DRC, and the Sahel are battling with severe insecurity crises. The economic development of the continent has stalled, and some may even say declined. Millions of African youths are leaving the continent in search of greener pastures in Europe through dangerous routes. In simple terms, things have gotten bad. Yet, the African Union is still in existence. What has it been doing? According to some African analysts, the African Union is an organization that primarily represents the interests of the powerful. It is toothless and ineffective, and it repeatedly proves itself incapable of ensuring prosperity, security, and peace for all Africans. The situations in the Sahel region, Sudan, and Tigray reflect how ineffective the AU has been. There are armed conflicts in about 20 countries in Africa, yet the African Union seems not to feel responsible. It seems the only thing the African Union does is to attend a series of meetings that yield no result. The situation is frankly pathetic. How can such an organization achieve African unity? To make matters worse, the African Union is not financially independent, but dependent on Western funding. How can an organization that was formed to put an end to Western interference in Africa depend on the West for funding? According to reports, over 75% of the AU's financing comes from external partners, particularly the European Union and individual European countries like France. Can you see the problem? This is the reason why the continent is not making progress and why the African Union has not been able to achieve much. If Europe is still funding the African Union, how can the African Union make decisions that will benefit the continent? We all know that Europe and the West do not want the progress of Africa because it would mean that they would no longer have access to cheap resources. This means that the African Union can only make decisions that will protect the interests of Europe and the West. A good example of this is how the African Union handled the situation in the Sahel region. When the insecurity first started in the region, the African Union did nothing to deal with the situation. Instead, Mali had to call external forces, including French forces, to deal with the situation. Of course, this didn't help the situation. The only thing it succeeded in doing was cementing the presence of France in the Sahel region. Now, what did the AU do when the coups occurred, which was a result of the military leaders being fed up with the insecurity? Instead of trying to deal with the underlying cause of the coups, which is insecurity, the AU organized a meeting that ended with condemning the coups and suspending the coup nations from the bloc. How pathetic is that? The truth is that the AU is useless, and the African dream of African unity can never be achieved with the AU. But what about ECOWAS? The situation is exactly the same. The founding purpose of ECOWAS in 1975 was to promote economic integration and improve the standard of living. But take a look at all the 15 member countries that make up ECOWAS. Does it look like the standard of living has been improved? Instead, each of these countries are faced with a staggering debt burden, low standard of living, poor infrastructures, and high rate of poverty. The masses in all these countries are suffering terribly from the bad decisions made by leaders whom they did not elect and who are the leaders of ECOWAS. Aside from promoting free trade and free movement among the member countries, what exactly has ECOWAS done in its 49 years of existence? Defenders of ECOWAS would say that the bloc has had some success in protecting and deepening peace, stability, and democracy, which is part of its objective for promoting economic integration, and they are correct. In April 2012, for example, it negotiated the restoration of constitutional rule in Mali after the ousting of President Amadou Traoré in a military coup. In September 2015, after a military putsch in Burkina Faso, ECOWAS facilitated the return of interim President Michel Kafando. In January 2017, it secured a democratic transition of power in the Gambia after longtime leader Yahya Jammeh, who had lost the December 2016 presidential election to current President Adama Barrow, tried to unlawfully remain in office. The question, however, still remains: how has ECOWAS helped in regional stability? Take a look at the Sahel, a part of West Africa. Does it look like it's stable? Aside from being known for its high level of poverty and poor level of development, the countries in the Sahel are currently known as the most dangerous places to visit because of the high level of insecurity. Jihadists and armed rebels have turned the Sahel into their playground, leading to the death of millions of people and the displacement of far more. Now, as a regional power, what exactly has ECOWAS done? The answer is nothing. Since the crisis in the Sahel began in 2013, the bloc has not offered to use its collective resources to help the situation. Maybe if it had, the insecurity would not be as prominent as it is. Without mincing words, Ibrahim Traore, president of Burkina Faso, is right in saying that one of the reasons for withdrawing from the bloc is that ECOWAS has not offered to help combat the insecurity facing the Sahel countries. Now, let's talk about democracy. Defenders of the bloc would say that ECOWAS has been instrumental in promoting democracy, but is that truly correct? Does promoting democracy only mean taking a strong stance whenever there is a military takeover? What about constitutional coups when civilian governments manipulate the constitution to extend their stay in power? It happened in Guinea in 2020, allowing Alpha Condé to rule for a third term until he was ousted by the military. The same year, Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara also secured a controversial third term in office after he won the October 31st presidential election, an election which everybody knows was not free and fair. In all this, how did ECOWAS respond to the situation? Were sanctions placed on Guinea and Ivory Coast? Of course not. ECOWAS didn't even say anything tangible. Yet, when it comes to military coups, that's when ECOWAS seems to have the power to defend democracy. Democracy is not just about elections, but also about the people having the power to choose leaders who would represent their interests. Yet, ECOWAS, which supposedly defends democracy, has never responded to the elections in West African countries which have never been free and fair. More often than not, election results are manipulated, and the people also end up with leaders whom they did not choose and who will lead them to greater despair. The current president of Nigeria, Bola Tinubu, who is also the leader of ECOWAS, is a good example of a president that was not the people's choice, and today, Nigerian citizens are suffering from it. Speaking of military coups, the different ways ECOWAS responded to the coups which occurred in 5 different countries in the region again proves how double standards and biased the bloc has become. When the coups occurred in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, ECOWAS immediately responded with sanctions, suspension from the bloc, and even threatened to military intervene in Niger. But what was their response in Chad? Aside from a mere statement condemning Chad, what else did ECOWAS do? Nothing. This is because the coup in Chad had the backing of France. So, tell me, was Ibrahim Traoré not correct when he said that ECOWAS has become a puppet of foreign interest? He certainly was. The only reason why ECOWAS threatened to militarily intervene in Niger was because France, the USA, and the international community were backing the decision. So, with all these, it is quite clear that the African dream of African unity can never be achieved with these blocs. But what about the AES? The Alliance of the Sahel was formed in May 2024 by Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso to pool development efforts between the 3 member countries and help them counter terrorist insecurity and external subversion. The great thing about this bloc is that the 3 countries believe in the same ideals and principles. For example, the 3 countries prioritize the sovereignty of their countries above everything. This is why they kicked out French forces, ended diplomatic relations with France, and distanced themselves from the West in general. The 3 countries have moved closer to non-Western allies including Russia, China, Turkey, and Iran. The leaders of the 3 countries are resolute and determined in their decisions. Despite the sanctions imposed on them by the regional bloc, ECOWAS, and the West, they have stood by their decision. The AES bloc believes in African unity, and this is why the three member countries have pooled their resources together to fight the insecurity in the region. In addition to this, the three countries have focused on prioritizing economic independence and nationalizing their resources. This is the reason why Mali, for example, is pursuing an aggressive negotiation strategy to ensure that Mali benefits massively from its gold resources. Burkina Faso, on the other hand, has suspended gold exports and is developing its gold mining industry with the establishment of a gold refinery. Niger has kicked out Orano, the French company that dominated its uranium industry. All these actions are what true Pan-African leaders would take to ensure the sovereignty and independence of their countries. Just imagine that all African leaders join the AES bloc under the leadership of President Traore. There is no doubt that things will definitely change. Unlike the African Union and the ECOWAS bloc that depend on external findings, the AES is completely financially independent. This means that it is free to make whatever decisions it wants to make, even if it means going against the interest of the West. With this, it is safe to conclude that the AES is currently Africa's best shot at achieving African unity. But the question is, will African leaders accept Traore's invitation to join the AES? What are your thoughts? Let us know in the comments section below. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment, subscribe, and share.